So first of all, I'd like to give you just a flavour of what is StoryLinks. Basically, StoryLinks is targeting the most challenging, vulnerable children in our schools. We're looking at, in the primary phase, between 6 and 11, children who've been excluded or at risk of exclusion. And the project builds on the thinking developed by Dave Forge and Abishai and their research around parent involvement and how much of a difference there is in children's academic intervention in school up to age 11. The amount the parent is involved with the child's learning, whether that's at home or at school, completely outweighs the factors of the type of school, the peer group, the quality of the curriculum, the quality of the teacher. Up to age 11, it is far outweighed by what the parent does with the child. So the thinking behind this project is, can we get these parents in? We're talking about children at risk of exclusion, and a lot of their parents are some of the hardest to engage parents. So, you know, it's a challenging area. 3 strands to the project then. One was delivering the training, this 3-day training to 55 professionals, then evaluating what the impact was when those trainees went in, those teachers who'd done the training delivered the 10-week intervention in school, and then finally building on the findings there and the literature research and the theory to create an online training manual to provide capacity and sustainability. For these children particularly who've got attachment anxiety, it's about really developing more positive attachment with the parents. And attachment theory states very clearly that attachment happens when the parent, the carer and the child are engaged in a mutually enjoyable activity. So a really important underpinning of this is, can this be enjoyable for these parents as well as the child? Can the reading at home be enjoyable for the parent as well as the child? Is it something that's creating a warm relationship between the parent and child within an educational context? So in the evaluation, we were looking at pupils' emotional and social well-being, pupils' behaviour, rates of exclusion, engagement of parents, and pupils' reading skills and their engagement with learning is what we wanted to see the impact of the 10-week intervention. So 55 teachers were trained, they went back into schools. We took 12 pupil-parent sets to look at in-depth for the evaluation. And here are some comments about some of the children who were in that group of 12 children. 2 of those children were partially bored because they were pulling out hair because of their nervousness. 1 had threatened to commit suicide, these are very disturbed children, but all of them were children who were at risk of exclusion. We used a case study methodology to look at what is a complex situation, complex factors, to get a multi-perspective, in-depth data from what is going on. And within the case study methodology, it allows you to use quantitative methods to get some of that hard data, but also the qualitative methods to really get, it's not just about what's gone in and what comes out, it's about the process. What happens when these parents come in? What happens when the child sits down with a parent at home? Where are they sitting down? What is the interaction? How do they feel about that? How does the school feel? So a lot of complex factors to look at. So there were over 80 semi-structured interviews, content analysis of the stories, over 100 stories, relating those stories to the issues as to why the child was referred to the StoryLinks intervention. One of the key things, then people said, you'll never get those parents in. And these are the parents we were looking to engage, the parents that everyone said you won't get them in. And we had 14 parent-pupil sets started with the evaluation. 12 carried on to the end. Of the 2 that dropped out, 1 had an excuse, couldn't come. Another one, there'd been illness, and they were carrying on with the intervention, but they hadn't finished it by the time we were doing the post measures. But of the 14, 12 of those parents came in. Of the parents of the children who came in, 2 of them were completely illiterate. 4, or was it 5 of the children had 1 parent who was illiterate. So there was very poor literacy in the families, and a lot of older siblings had poor literacy and history of behaviour difficulties. And here's some of the typical comments. Mum is eager, very eager, surprisingly eager. The school is quite shocked that she's actually turning up. And I think the reason the parents turned up, because the whole programme was designed to be solution-focused, to empower the parent, invite them in, not when they're just being bust up in the playground, but at another time, and say, as the most important person in your child's life, would you like to come in and help us with your child's reading? And we're going to write stories that address your child's emotional issues as well, but in a safe way, just in a story way, in animal stories. And we chose reading particularly to engage with these parents because that is in our culture a traditional interface between school and home. To be a good parent, there is an understanding, an implicit understanding. You hear your child read. Well, 2/3 of these parents had never really heard their child read. And so that was a big thing. We were focused on the attachment, positive attachment, but focusing on changing the reading patterns. And can we make reading something to promote attachment, to help their relationship? So I'll go through this quite quickly. We found there was significant impact on homeschool relationship. In the no change column, they were parents. It's interesting, the teachers all said there had been a change, and some parents, you don't know, maybe didn't quite want to acknowledge that it hadn't been good before, but certainly the school fair, in all of them, there'd been improvement. And this thing, was it enjoyable for the parent to come in? A lot of these parents have been into school, their child's been in trouble, and they come in rather bristling to defend their child. Is it going to be enjoyable for them to come into school? A lot of them have had poor experience in schools themselves. So that was a key thing that we were looking at there. Pupils, all except one said enjoyed it, all the rest really enjoyed it. And a lot of them, although it was only 20 minutes, they talked about how at home they didn't have much time with their parent or the other siblings. So this was sort of a key factor, and seeing her alone. We had one dad, all the rest were mums. So here's just an example of a story. This was written by a child whose mother had a disability. The two older children were in care, behaviour difficulties, literacy difficulties. She described him as her carer. At school, he did the washing, he did the cooking. He was only 9. In school, he was completely all over the place, had been excluded. So this story, you could just read it through, and I'm sure you'll just see from reading that how this, in the metaphor, in a way, and just in the story, there's a sense of, you know, something comes in to him that has got some nourishment, that a sense that he can be looked after. Bo the elephant. So these stories were all analysed in relation to the presenting issues for the children, and here's just 3 examples there. And then we used the Goodman Strengths and Difficulties Questionnaire to look at a range of factors, and one big one was pupils' emotional stress. And you can see here, very high is above 19, where you can see at the beginning, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them were very high or above. And after the, well, it was about 12 weeks when we did the post-intervention, 8 of those had come down. Okay, it could be other factors, but it's, you know, it's quite significant. Classroom behaviour, and this was measured by the class teacher pre and post. The class teacher wasn't involved with the intervention. You can see here very high is above 5. So you can see 5 or above, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, a significant decrease, you know, with some quite dramatically decreasing at the end of the intervention. Exclusion, we took exclusion to be defined not just as being excluded from school, because lots of, you know, schools have got different inclusion policies, and as much as possible trying not to exclude as well, but also how many times the child was removed from the classroom because of bad behaviour, and how many times they were taken off the playground because of their behaviour issues. And again, there was significant, particularly in removal from the classroom. You can see twice or more a week, 5 before and none after, and reducing there. So that was quite a significant reduction. But the biggest, one of the biggest significant impacts was that before the programme, 3/4 of the parents who've got less than once a month, well, most of them hadn't heard some hadn't ever heard their child read. So we've got 3/4 not hearing their child read, and at the end of it, 2/3 of them were hearing their child read twice or more a week. So that was very encouraging, really. I was pleased. So the reading skills, we used the Neal analysis of reading ability, but in fact there was no significant improvement using that. But there was definite increase in their attitude to reading, that they actually wanted to read, that it wasn't a battle at home to read, and in school class teachers said that they were interested to start reading.